Hi, I'm Randy Horton from Orthogonal. We're here in Boston at the Convention Center for the LSX World Congress. You can't make it to every conference, and even if you can't talk to every interesting person at every conference. So we're here to bring you some of the more interesting people with interesting things going on in MedTech here. So today we're here with Trena Depel. Trena, tell us about yourself and your company.
So I serve as Vice President of Regulatory, Clinical, and Quality at Teal Health. Teal Health is a company that is dedicated to getting every woman in the U.S. screened for cervical cancer. We have brought, through the FDA, the first and only at-home self-collection device for cervical cancer screening with telehealth wraparound services to manage the prescribing of the device and virtual care.
Very good. And tell us about yourself and your personal background.
So I've been working in medical devices pretty much all of my life. My dad was a medical device engineer and developed medical devices exclusively in the silicone space. And so I started working for him when I was 12 in his manufacturing factory.
Oh, wow. Wow. So this is a deep family history.
It is.
And did you gravitate even at 12 to the regulatory and quality side?
No, I started in quality, and I didn't intend to go into medical devices, but life intervened. I got really sick my last semester of college. I got renegade mono and missed the interview season and ended up working for my father, which was not my plan, and then ended up staying in the business. And I transitioned into regulatory and clinical earlier in my career from quality.
Very good. This isn't on the question list, so feel free to back. But women's cervical cancer, clearly a big issue, but any numbers you can drop on, what we're at, how much early screening can help, and what percentage of cancer is caught early on, that kind of thing? Because I'm guessing there's some really impactful numbers here in terms of what you're working on.
True. So cervical cancer was the #1 killer of women in the United States up until the development of the Pap Smear in the 1950s, which became a very effective screen for cervical cancer. As you may or may not know, a Pap smear requires a visit to the clinician. It requires a woman to put her legs in stirrups, have a speculum inserted. It can be an uncomfortable and invasive exam for many. So that was the standard of care until it was discovered in the late 1990s that HPV was the causative virus for most cervical cancers, and the development of HPV molecular tests developed, and the first HPV molecular test was approved by FDA in 2014.
Okay.
Since then, leading guideline makers like the American Cancer Society and the USPSTF have advocated primary HPV as the most sensitive screen for cervical cancer that exists, superior to Pap alone and superior to co-testing, which is Pap and HPV. So the landscape is really changing toward primary HPV, and primary HPV self-collection is only facilitated through using primary HPV testing because you can use vaginal cells rather than cervical cells, which is what allows self-collection.
Okay. So tell us about your device, and I'm guessing it builds on that, right? And has some unique value on that. So tell us, where do you come in with your device?
So despite the broad availability of Pap smears, still 1 in 3 women either delay or do not engage in screening, which leaves 92 million. There's a 92 million women in the United States who are eligible for cervical cancer screening, but that leaves about 20 million who are not screening and therefore vulnerable to cervical cancer. So Teal, along with other companies, recognized this as a gap in an offering for women's health. The National Cancer Institute also has been working for many years on a project called The Last Mile, which is aimed to promote self-collection, which has been used in other countries for a few decades, to try to close the screening gap. So Teal approached the problem a little differently. Instead of just developing a device, which is purpose-built for this collection, whereas some other devices are like modified flock swabs or like modified nasal swabs. Our device is purpose-built for vaginal self-collection and for ease of use in the at-home setting. And we approached the problem by developing a unique, easy-to-use device directed at the at-home setting, but also offering telehealth wraparound services for the many women who either do not have access to care, do not engage in care, Rural women have a paucity of access to OBGYNs, even primary care. So our approach is to bring this collection into the home where people can access it and then deliver education and results and encourage any follow-up steps where needed.
And that's all. So you have multiple telemedicine points of contact in this process.
We do.
Okay. Got it. Got it. And is that like a live somebody helping walk you through actually using the device?
Yeah, there's multi-channel communication, but yes, there are licensed clinicians who offer telehealth services, but there's also a vast library and network of resources that patients can access through our website, through their telehealth portal, through chat.
And am I correct in assuming, since the evidence guidelines are pretty clear on what standard of care is, that this is something that's generally covered?
Yes, so preventive screening is covered. The device itself and the mailing back and forth is not yet covered.
Okay.
We're working on obtaining coverage from insurance companies for that element.
But the core coverage for the service itself is kind of a slam dunk, because it's covered, people should be doing the test. It's simply a utilization issue.
Yes, it's
right?
a grade A preventive health service under the ACA.
That's terrific. That's terrific. At what point in your journey did you realize, hey, I think that just the device isn't enough, but we actually need to be a telemedicine player in the niche space as well?
Yeah, that was before my time. Our CEO, who's a very visionary individual, recognized early on that the device itself was not going to close the gap, because if, like currently, other self-collection options are only approved for the healthcare setting.
Sure.
If a person is not getting into a healthcare setting or doesn't have access to a healthcare setting, they just don't have the option to self-collect. So I think she recognized early on that you can't just send a device into the home. You have to offer the wraparound services and education.
This is more complicated than a COVID kind of
Well, it's more
test.
complicated in the sense that it's a prescription device. It's a cancer screening. So it's not an over-the-counter available at your CVS kind of device.
Okay, very good. So, all right, so this is interesting. You have a physical device, very clearly regulated for obvious reasons. Is your Zoom like an FDA-regulated device, the telemedicine part?
No, it's not FDA regulated.
Okay.
It is regulated by telehealth requirements and standards, but it is not an FDA. It is not under the regulatory authority of FDA. It's not software as a medical device because it's not a clinical decision-making tool.
And do you have to expend effort figuring out how to draw that line between what's in a device and what's not?
We did. I mean, FDA knows where the lanes are, but they were understandably very curious about how Teal intended to deliver the service. So they did ask questions. They wanted to understand the telehealth workflow. But we, through our early pre-submission discussions, were clear about where we believed the telehealth fit, which was not under their regulatory authority. But we remained very open to sharing that development to the extent that it supported their questions about the device itself.
So it's sort of like it's a relatively minor issue if you can diffuse it and address it just early and often, as opposed to throwing it at the end, oh, by the way, there's a telemedicine service.
Yeah, and I think it was important to us. I mean, we were an unknown player with the FDA. The other companies they were working with were well-established pharmaceutical or diagnostic companies. Right. And so it was important to us to be transparent, to work with FDA to help them understand that we were a serious player doing serious scientific work and that our delivery model supported guideline-based screening.
Okay. So let me ask you a different question. I mean, it's hard being a quality and regulatory professional. I'm always amazed at the number of domains people have to deal with, especially when you have physical manufacturing and all these other things. Do you now have to learn a whole new skill set in terms of being essentially a provider of sorts?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm not directly responsible for the compliance around the telehealth. So there is some interesting interplays between advertising and promoting a telehealth service
versus a device.
With a device versus the device alone. So that's been a newer area to navigate.
Any advice for companies who might be getting into a at-home device with a telemedicine complement on things to do or not to do you wish you had known early on? Or
I want to say Teal's de novo approval just made it easier. Our approval encompasses, or is really a broad category for at-home collection devices using molecular tests. So I think there's now a clear 510(k) pathway for at-home diagnostic tests or collection devices. And so I think in general, I would give this to any company, use the pre-submission process to retire early questions and concerns of the agency. It does speed the review process in the end. FDA doesn't want to reject applications, but they have to meet their timelines, and they will if you're not in alignment.
Got it. Very good. One more off-script question, but thoughts about interesting aspects of quality and regulatory when you're dealing with at home and taking things that used to be clinic and now saying, oh, we're pushing with the patient. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so at home really changes the risk profile that you have to consider because you can't control the environment under which the device is being used. So we did extensive safety testing on the device itself to make sure that it's robust and we understood how people could use or misuse it. We also did extensive usability and human factors testing, which was what supported our at-home indication and has not yet supported at-home indications for other manufacturers who've gotten FDA approval for self-collection devices.
That must be a pretty eye-opening process watching the research come out from that, I would think.
From the human factors?
Yeah.
It is, but people are smarter than we give them credit for. I think we worked with some consultants who worked on the COVID RADx program, and they said, any crazy thing you think people can do with your device, it will be done. So far, we've had well over 1,000 uses in clinical research and commercial use, and have not seen anything surprising yet. But I think women should be given a lot of credit for what they're capable of doing.
All right. Very good. And you're speaking here at the conference, correct?
I am later today.
And what are you talking about?
We're talking about the regulatory landscape, the changing regulatory landscape.
Okay. Very good.
I think. I don't know.
You think
The title.
Fair enough. Well, thank you very much for coming out. You have a great conference.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks.